Now what you're about to witness is the story of the most deadly Tinder date in history, where nothing is what it seems in this thrilling tale. And good police work leads to a hunch that culminates on December 8th. After hours of combing through the dense forest, a detective stumbles upon freshly disturbed soil. And as they, begin to dig, they soon find a suitcase. And inside it, they discovered, well, what's going on, Midnight Mafia? Welcome back to Mr. E-Files, and thank you all for joining me today. I got a great story for you. It is the deadliest Tinder story ever. So before we start, why don't you just please give this video a thumbs up. The thumbs up, the like is really all that matters. That's the only way nowadays to push this video out to other people, so please do that for me right now. And other than that, check out the merch I got below, some new designs. I got this new design that is the Midnight Mafia Assemble hoodie on the front and the original Midnight Mafia hoodie on the back. Check it out. Also, if you wish to support the channel, please join Patreon. Other than that, there's no other than that. We have no further ado. So without any further ado, as of now, it is time to slip into a mind that is not our own. Let's go. It starts with a sunny day in New Zealand. The kind of bright, hopeful day that draws tourists from all over the world. Grace Millane, a young British backpacker, was one of them. But on her 22nd birthday, something went extremely wrong. Grace never answered her parents' birthday calls. And that's when days later, in the lush mountains outside of Auckland, not only would something horrible be discovered, but the way it was found might be the most terrible thing that you've heard all week. Grace Millane, well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. She was a vibrant, adventurous young woman with her whole life ahead of her. After graduating from the University of Lincoln, which is in England, with a degree in advertising and marketing, she decided to take a gap year to explore the world. Her parents described her as a lovely, outgoing person who was always fun to be around. And she was known for her infectious smile and for her love of travel. You see, Grace had spent the last 6 weeks exploring South America, sharing countless photos and stories of her adventures with her friends and family back home. But now she was eager to continue her journey to New Zealand, where they planned to celebrate her upcoming 22nd birthday. And she could not have been more thrilled. She was absolutely excited about doing this. Her parents even received a message from her on December 1st, 2018, about how excited she was for the plans on that day. But when her birthday came the very next day on the 2nd, the messages suddenly just stopped abruptly from Grace. So clearly disturbed by this, her parents, tried calling her. But there was no answer and no answer. I mean, I can only imagine this would be a parent's worst nightmare. And then a whole 3 days later, a suffering 72 hours with no word from Grace, her family then reported her missing to the Auckland police. And as the days started passing without any news at all, the police began retracting Grace's steps methodically, and they quickly learned that Grace had been using a site called Tinder, which of course is a popular dating app that I'm sure at least 50% of people watching this are guilty of at least one point having on their phone. And of course, she was doing this though to meet new people along her travels. And one of her matches was Jesse Kempson, a 26-year-old man living in Auckland. And they didn't just match, but they actually matched and then met up on the night of December 1st for that date. Yes, what Grace was talking about to her parents was she was so excited to go on this date. And from there, Grace and Jesse were seen together at several bars and restaurants around Auckland. and even security camera footage captured the two of them in the elevator of the City Life Hotel at around 9:41 p.m. So from the outside, it appeared to be just this typical date between two young people, getting to know each other. However, beneath the surface, there were dark undertones, because friends of Jesse would later recall that he had a history of troubling behavior. I mean, for one, he had a tendency to lie, creating these elaborate stories to gain sympathy or to, manipulate others. And despite his charming exterior, Jesse was hiding a dark and violent side. So as Grace and Jesse moved from bar to bar, the night seemed to be progressing kind of normally. They laughed, they drank, and they appeared to be enjoying each other's company. But as the evening wore on, and they headed back to Jesse's hotel room, the tone of the night began to shift. And then inside the City Life Hotel, the mood changed. And what started as a night of casual drinks and conversation quickly spiraled into a terrible nightmare. I mean, Kempson would later claim that, and I'm gonna mince words here, Grace had supposedly asked for a hot and heavy entanglement. And yes, like I said, I'm mincing my words. But this is a statement he used to justify what happened next. But before I tell you that, the evidence tells a completely different story. One of a predator taking advantage of a young woman in a foreign land. So in the quiet of their hotel room, with the city skyline stretching out in the windows behind them, Kempson's true nature emerged. And as he later admitted to police, he began to strangle Grace, a violent act that required sustained pressure on her neck for several minutes. It wasn't a momentary lapse or a tragic accident. It was deliberate, controlled, and cold-blooded. And as Grace just lay lifeless on the bed, Kempson, relaxed. He did not panic at all. Instead, his actions grew even more sinister, because at 1:30 in the morning, he decided to, calmly take photos of her body, adjusting her limbs into various different poses. Then he searched the internet for disturbing topics like the hottest type of fire and flesh-eating birds, as if he was contemplating ways to dispose her body. It was as if the realities of his actions hadn't fully set in. Or worse, he was literally relishing in the aftermath of his crime. And the following day, Kempson's behavior became even more chilling. Because, guess what? He messaged another woman on Tinder. And yep, he set up a date for later that evening. And he did all of this, mind you, while Grace's body remained in his hotel room, lifeless and becoming putrid. To him, it seemed as if this was just, another day in the neighborhood. He even took the time to rent a carpet cleaner and purchased a suitcase large enough to conceal Grace's body. By this point, he was fully engrossed in covering up his crime, acting with a disturbing level of composure and forethought. Then, on the morning of December 3rd, Kempson rolled the suitcase containing Grace's body down the hotel hallway into the elevator. And security footage shows him clearly checking out of the hotel, dragging the suitcase behind him. Then outside, he kind of hailed for a taxi toward the Waitakere Ranges. It was this remote area about 12 miles from Auckland, and it was there in the dense forest that he dug a shallow grave and buried Grace, hoping that the wilderness would forever hide his horrible crime. But meanwhile, back in Auckland, the police were intensifying their search for Grace. And after her parents, reported her missing, a team was then assigned to investigate her last known whereabouts. That's when the footage from the City Life Hotel was reviewed. And then the police, of course, had their first lead. The last person to see Grace alive, Jesse Kempson. They tracked him down very quickly. And at first, Kempson played the role of a cooperative witness. He told the police that they had parted ways after a pleasant evening. spinning a story of how Grace, decided to go her own way around 10 p.m. However, his calm demeanor and polite manner couldn't mask the inconsistencies in his story for that long. He started to, slip up, and it looks like he wasn't as smart as he thought he was. So with these inconsistencies, detectives ended up confronting him with the footage of him and Grace together at the hotel. And as they pressed a little harder, and then just a little bit more harder, like a dam about to explode, cracks began to show in his facade. And that's when immediately Kempson's story changed again, and then changed again. And his composure then actually started to waver for once. And under the pressure of intense questioning, his account of that night began to truly crumble. He went from a person of interest to the prime suspect in a matter of hours. And on December 8th, a week after Grace's disappearance, Kempson was officially taken into custody. And then the following day, a search team was sent to the Waitakere Ranges. Based on his, erratic movement and recent purchases, they suspected he had tried to dispose of Grace's body in someplace remote. Now, this is great police work because their hunch was 100% right. And after hours of combing through this dense forest area, a detective stumbled upon a freshly disturbed batch of soil. So what did they do? They started digging, and soon they found a suitcase. And inside it, they discovered the remains of Grace Millane, bringing the search for her to a tragic end. And with the discovery of Grace's body, Kempson's web of lies completely unraveled. Investigators found his search history, the bizarre photos that he had taken, and the receipts for the carpet cleaner and the suitcase. Each piece of evidence kind of painted a picture of a man who was not only guilty, but shockingly unremorseful. So the police pieced together a timeline of events that showed a premeditated plan to cover up his crime. Forensic analysis indicated that Grace's death wasn't a brief moment of passion gone wrong as Kempson claimed. Instead, it was a prolonged, brutal assault that ended in her tragic death. And of course, as we know now, after she died, Jesse had no remorse whatsoever about folding her up and putting her in a suitcase and then literally leaving the hotel with not even a little bit of sweat on his brow as he thought he got away with murder. Doesn't it sound like the worst Tinder date possible? But to end things off, the judge delivered him a life sentence, and the man who charmed his way into the lives of unsuspecting women was now being led away in handcuffs. Absolutely no way she could have predicted that this was going to happen to her. But in these three stories right here, premonitions and dreams are what led to unthinkable acts, but also unbelievable resilience to take place. I mean, you don't want to miss this one, so make sure to click right here. So before you go, make sure to like this and also make sure to check out my podcast, an exclusive episode dropping Monday. And it is on all major podcast services. The link will be in the description. So stay well, stay safe, and stay frosty, my friends. Cheers.